Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. I'm Melody, and today we are talking about jukebox musicals. Late 2000s to early 2010s, there was a resurgence in musical movies. Unlike during the height of musical movies from the 1920s to the 1960s, these musicals were specifically what is called jukebox musicals. A jukebox musical is a musical that uses popular music instead of an original score, like traditional musicals do. And unlike traditional musicals, the music in a jukebox musical usually follows a specific theme that moves the plot of the story along. So why were these jukebox musicals even a thing, and why were they so popular at this time? Well, before we dig into that, let's dive into the movies, a funky, sometimes cringy, magical musical universe.
My God, you have perfect teeth.
So first up on the list today, we have Across the Universe, which came out in 2007 and was directed by Julie Taymor. Across the Universe was an ambitious, unique musical based on the music of arguably the biggest band of all time, the Beatles. Fun fact, the Beatles actually starred in their own jukebox musicals way back in the day. These include their movies A Hard Day's Night, Help, Magical Mystery Tour, and The Yellow Submarine. Across the Universe, however, is not about the band The Beatles. Instead, it is about three main characters and three side characters who make up what I will call the gang. In this gang, there's Jude, played by Jim Sturgis, his best friend Max Kerrigan, played by Joe Anderson, who you might recognize from the fourth Twilight movie, Breaking Dawn 2 Electric Boogaloo, and Lucy Kerrigan, Max's little sister, played by Evan Rachel Wood. The side characters are Sadie, played by Dana Fuchs, Jojo, played by Martin Luther McCoy, and Prudence, who is played by TV Carpio. Across the Universe starts with a flash forward of our main dude Jude sitting on a beach and singing about a girl. How typical. He had loved this girl and somehow lost this love, and also there's an insinuation that something bad has happened to this girl. Despite what you would think from a movie like this, the first songs in the movie are actually from the Beatles' second studio album, With the Beatles, and not the first one, Please Please Me, which they for some reason skipped over even though it has a lot of great songs. The plot of the movie loosely follows the timeline of the Beatles' discography, although it is not perfect, and the basic plot is actually about this group of eventual friends and roommates as they navigate the events of the 1960s. This is all, of course, set against the backdrop of the Romeo and Juliet-like love story between the main characters, Jude and Lucy. So Jude leaves his job at the shipyard and his home in the poor seaside town of Liverpool, England, where the Beatles were from, if you didn't know, and he heads to the US to search for his biological dad, who was a GI stationed in Liverpool during World War II. One very cool part of Across the Universe that they don't do in most other jukebox musicals is that they include a lot of moments in the film where they mention other Beatles songs and Beatles history, despite those songs and those moments in Beatles history not being directly named in the movie. Like, for example, when the foreman is handing out paychecks to Jude and his shipyard crew, and he casually mentions that when he's 64, he'll be long gone from this place, referencing, of course, the song When I'm 64. Many of the characters are named after characters in Beatles songs that they allude to later, like Maxwell's Silver Hammer, or actually sing the songs of, like Prudence, Jude, and Lucy. These moments act as fun Easter eggs for the bigger Beatles fans out there. And as far as Beatles history goes, there is at least one scene in the beginning of the movie when we meet Jude and his current girlfriend in a club in Liverpool. This club is actually based on the real Cavern Club, where the Beatles' manager first spotted the group. The Beatles performed at the Cavern Club numerous times between 1961 and 1963. So next in the story, Jude arrives at Princeton College in the United States, where he meets his biological dad and resident troublemaker, Max, who quickly becomes his bestie. Max and his buddies show Jude how to be a typical 60s American college student by doing things like smoking pot, drinking, and hitting on women at a local bar. By the time Jude and Max finally leave for Greenwich Village, New York after the Thanksgiving dinner from hell, we see that Jude has fully fallen for Lucy, Max's activist little sister. Lucy and Max's family is portrayed to be pretty wealthy, and neither of them really had any kind of adversity before the film really starts, but Lucy is a staunch feminist and civil rights activist anyway. She's against having babies and berates her brother and Jude over the real meaning of Thanksgiving, although she does date a guy who joins the military. Also, the relationship between between Lucy and Jude is a little bit questionable because Lucy is still clearly in high school when the movie starts, and we don't know how old Jude is, but it's assumed that he's around Max's age. He already has a job he's not seen going to school, so that's just a little bit worrisome. But despite all this, at Jude and Max's new digs in New York, we meet the rest of the gang. Aspiring singer Sadie, who is a Janis Joplin stand-in character named after the song Sexy Sadie. Jojo, the Jimi Hendrix stand-in character named after another Beatles song, Get Back from 1970. And Prudence, who comes in through the bathroom window. Prudence is the only queer character in the movie and is actual good queer rep for the time, especially for a movie that came out in 2007. Prudence is also sort of a Yoko Ono stand-in character, but she doesn't really get any of the main scenes that we would expect from such a character. Lucy also moves to New York as well after an obligatory fight with her mother about why she just has to move to New York and be a part of everything that is happening there. So the big historical event of this part of the movie is the 1967 Detroit riots, in which a boy in JoJo's community is murdered by the Detroit police. This is probably the saddest scene in the movie, and there really isn't much other talk in the film about race struggles, which were a huge part of the 1960s in the United States. The only other things that we get in the film kind of alluding to this is when JoJo mentions that there was no way of getting out of serving in the military where he's from. And we also get a brief shot of the newsreel about Martin Luther King Jr.'s death during the obligatory main character's brooding scene. And I get it, this film revolves around white people and their stories mainly, but still, it was just such a huge part of the 1960s that it's kind of surprising that there's only a few minutes of it in the film. So after a while of having fun gallivanting around 1960s Greenwich Village, the gang then wrestles with the political and psychological struggles of being citizens in a country that has decided to go to war. Max gets sent off to boot camp, the gang attends a protest, Lucy gets interested in and joins an activist group based on the real-life activist group, the Weather Underground. The gang attends an upper society artists party, goes on a trip in more ways than one, and they find Prudence, who has run away for some reason, and they all return back home in one piece. Well, kinda. They do mention that Max is all screwed up due to serving in the war, much like many people who served in Vietnam, and I do think that they do a good job of portraying the PTSD that these people went through, if for only a brief moment. Then everything and everyone in the movie starts to break apart as they do in these films right before the climax. Sadie and her band break up, Sadie and JoJo also break up, Prudence is MIA once again for some reason, and Jude and Lucy break up. Meanwhile, Lucy also realizes the group that she joined might not be the good guys. The real Weather Underground group actually did make a homemade bomb that exploded in a townhouse in Greenwich Village in 1970, which is mirrored here in the film, but Lucy actually survives this incident by refusing to participate in the bomb making, saying, "I thought it was the other side that dropped bombs." During this time, Jude, who was sent back to England by immigration for being at a protest, which sounds familiar, then returns back to the US, legally this time. The gang decides to then surprise Lucy by making an homage to the Beatles' famous rooftop concert, which they held atop their Apple Corps building, not to be confused with Apple Music. On January 30th of 1969, the Beatles performed their last ever concert from their headquarters at 3 Savile Row. The surrounding businesses weren't too happy about this, though, despite most people in the area enjoying the show, and eventually the police were called. The police did let the Beatles finish the show despite all this, and of course this entire scene is mirrored in the movie. And then, of course, we know that the Beatles disbanded in 1970, which puts an end to their discography and to this movie. So roll credits with Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, finally. Across the Universe is the only movie in this video that is not based on an existing Broadway musical. And despite some jumps around in time with the music here and there, the movie does an overall good job of outlining things historically. Considering exactly how much was going on during this time, I feel like they did a good job. I do personally feel like, though, that they could have used a little bit more of their earlier music, but that's just more of a personal preference than anything else, as the Beatles' earlier songs are some of my favorites. And to be completely honest, this Jukebox Musical is also my favorite of the bunch, so I'm a little biased, simply because it's based on the music of the Beatles. I grew up listening to Beatles music, and it has a very special place in my heart. My mom and her siblings collected the Beatles records, and I have a large majority of the original albums that they owned. Plus, the 1960s were just a very interesting time in history, which also adds to the overall vibe of the movie. It's also really neat that they took the approach of not doing a biopic, because so many of those already exist surrounding the Beatles, but I feel like the story would have not been as good if it weren't an original script. Besides, the Beatles documented enough of their own career that a biopic of them is not exactly needed. Also, the outlining of the plot with the music instead of making the music fit the story makes it just that much more unique. You can also tell that the production and writing team really took their time with their research and respected the music. But Across the Universe definitely started this weird timeline of Jukebox Musicals, which continues with Mamma Mia from 2008, directed by Phillida Lloyd.
Is your father here?
You tell me.
Mamma Mia is a film that takes jukebox musicals in the opposite direction. It is based on the stage musical of the same name and features the music of Swedish disco royalty ABBA, and it fits the songs into the story of the plot rather than the other way around like Across the Universe did. As a result, the songs in the movie are not in any kind of chronological order based on their release dates, but is rather thrown wherever they fit best in the story. Mamma Mia stars Amanda Seyfried as Sophie and Meryl Streep as her mom Donna. We also get Julie Walters, Christine Baranski, Stellan Skarsgård, Colin Firth, and Pierce Brosnan to round out the main cast. The story of Mamma Mia revolves around Sophie's upcoming wedding to her fiancé Sky, played by Dominic Cooper. Sophie and her mom live in Greece for some reason, which is never explained, but I'm not complaining, where Sophie's mom Donna owns a B&B. Donna is concerned because Sophie is getting married so young. She's supposed to be around 20 in the movie, which is a valid concern in my opinion. Donna was a seemingly very popular disco singer with her friends back in the day and thinks Sophie hasn't lived enough life yet to be able to get married. Donna also has never found out who Sophie's biological dad is. Why do these main characters always have daddy issues? So Sophie decides to surprise Donna by inviting all three of her prospective dads to her wedding so one of them can walk her down the aisle. After finding out who they are from Donna's diary, of course, questionable move, Sophie. So shenanigans ensue involving Sophie trying to figure out which of these men is her real dad, and the dads retell how they met Donna while struggling with their lingering feelings for her. For Donna, not their prospective daughter. Sophie eventually gets found out, but not before somehow forming very strong relationships with these men, even though it's only been a few days. And of course, there's the inevitable moment when Sophie and Sky may or may not still get married. They do decide to go through with it at this point in the film. Sophie then decides that Donna will walk her down the aisle, which she should have just done from the beginning. Donna raised her after all. Donna and Pierce Brosnan's character fight on their way to the wedding because they're actually both really in love with each other, but they eventually make it to the venue. At the altar, Sophie decides she's actually not ready to get married yet, and she and Sky call off their nuptials for now, deciding to travel the world instead. Sophie also decides that it's actually not that important which of these men is her real dad, and that all three have been like father figures over the past couple of days, so she doesn't want to know which one is her real father after all, because she loves them all. Like mother, like daughter, I guess. We also learn that Pierce Brosnan is actually divorced, which has been the main conflict of his character with Donna because she thought that he was still married and flirting with her and she thought that was bad. He and Donna profess that they are still in love with each other and they get married in lieu of Sophie and Sky, so I guess no money wasted here. And we also learn that Colin Firth has found a much younger Greek boyfriend, so more queer up, yay, even though that is kind of a throwaway scene at the end of the movie. And scene. Overall, the story of Mamma Mia is fun, if a bit convoluted, and I can't ever hate something with Christine Baranski and Meryl Streep in it. The Greek scenery is also so beautiful that it kind of makes up for the weird parts of the plot that don't really make any sense. After all, the stage musical premiered in 1999, and we had DNA tests then, so I know we wouldn't have had a storyline otherwise if she just had a DNA test done on these guys and called it quits, but the fact that it's not even mentioned as an option is kind of weird. Like, they could have been waiting on a DNA test the whole movie because it would take a while to get to Greece or something like that. And then at the end, when Sophie decides she doesn't really want to know which one is her real father, she could have taken the tests and thrown them in the ocean or something. But I digress. So the music. I think the ABBA songs add to the story and definitely can fill a whole play or movie like this. And actually they did fill two because they have such a diverse catalog to begin with. I also really enjoy the fact that the singing in the film is not perfect. It makes it feel more real and in the moment, like a stage play would be. All in all, it's definitely not the worst jukebox musical on this list. Speaking of which,
1,000 times girls drink free, dudes pay full freights. They are dudes.
the Jukebox musical movie Rock of Ages came out in 2012 and was directed by Adam Shankman. This is the only movie on our list to be directed by a man, which I'm sure has nothing to do with anything here. This movie stars Tom Cruise, U, as Stacey Jacks, the washed-up rock star, Alec Baldwin, double U, as Dennis Dupree, the bar owner, and Russell Brand, triple U, as Lonnie, Julianne Hough as Sherry Christian, the out-of-town dreamer, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Paul Giamatti, Malin Ackerman, Bryan Cranston, Mary J. Blige, and Diego Boneta. You can see they were trying to pack the movie here with stars. Rock of Ages is mainly about Sherry Christian, Hough's character, as she moves to LA in 1987 to pursue her dream of becoming a singer. And as these movies usually go, Sherry gets a job at a bar right away, as soon as another bartender quits, at a place called the Bourbon Room, which is owned by Baldwin and Russell Brand's characters. Here we learn that the bar/club is in dire straits. No, not the band. They are in debt to the IRS. Well, technically the city, I guess. They owe back taxes, which is very 1980s of them. So the bar's owner, Baldwin, and his assistant, Lonnie, Brand, decide to hire failing rock star Stacey Jacks, Cruz, to bring people and money back in. Drew, the bar back, Boneta, and Sherry bond over their mutual dream of becoming rock stars. Then we meet the anti-rock and roll antagonist for this film, Patricia Whitmore, played by Catherine Zeta-Jones, and her merry band of Christian moms. This is, of course, based on real Christian moms of the time and other people that thought that rock music was satanic. Yeah, that thought's been around a long time. The moms then decide to organize a protest in front of the bar. What comes next is pretty standard for these movies. Maybe that's also why I don't like it, because it's so formulaic? I don't know. I refuse to rewatch it for this video because I cannot stand Tom Cruise. Anyway, Drew and Sherry start to fall in love, of course, and the opening band for the big night, TM, canceled on them. Oh no! And Sherry convinces Drew to have his band perform instead, which makes him pretty nervous because he actually has stage fright. Double oh no. Couldn't see that coming. It's also kind of weird that at this point in the movie they snuck a 1990s song in, but it doesn't really matter to the plot anyways. If this movie didn't have the musical element, it would be the exact same story. Meanwhile, Stacey has sex multiple times with a reporter played by Malin Ackerman, which is important because Sherry actually gets caught bringing vodka to the lovers in Stacey's bedroom later, and this makes Drew break up with her because, you know, you always gotta have that big misunderstanding to cause conflict for the main love interests. God, this is worse than a Harlequin romance, I swear. Anyway, the breakup inspires him to get over his stage fright and sing for the opening act after all. This next part in the film is the part of the plot where the gang splits up before eventually coming back together for the finale of the movie. Sherry quits the bar and gets a job at a local strip club. Drew signs with the big record label TM, and the bar crew worries that the Bourbon Room will have to close after all. But it'll be okay because two straight actors playing gay men confess their love for each other. Woohoo! No, I think this is why I don't like this movie. Drew and Sherry then meet back up at their first date spot at the Hollywood sign to say their goodbyes. Sherry has decided that she's going to be moving back to Oklahoma. Drew then has his broody main character moment and wanders into Empire Records, a much better film, where he accidentally finds Sherry's lost LPs that were stolen on her bus ride to LA in the beginning of the movie. He rebuys her entire collection and returns them to her, an act that rekindles Sherry's love for Drew. Stacey also realizes he's actually in love with the reporter and returns to the Bourbon Room to meet back up with her. The gang then counter-protests against Patricia's evil Christian mom mob. Drew's boy band that he unwittingly became a part of by signing that contract with the big record company, TM, gets rejected by the rocker crowd at the bar, and Drew leaves the stage in search of Sherry. Drew and his original band and Sherry then sing Drew's song, which is actually Don't Stop Believin' by Journey. This performance inspires Stacy while he has sex with Constance the reporter in the bathroom. No, this is why I hate this movie. At the end of the film, there's a scene where everyone is back together and happy years later, and everyone's dreams have finally come true. Now, those who know me would think that I would love this movie because it revolves around 80s music, but the whole thing just feels very forced. Rock of Ages is also the only one on the list not to focus on a specific band or group's music, but just 80s music in general. And I think this lends to the overall disconnectedness of the film. It also shoves the plot into the songs instead of letting the music add to it. Rock of Ages is also just such a contrived and cookie-cutter film that it really adds nothing to the jukebox musical genre. Sure, some of it is nostalgic, but I guess I just can't get past the awful members of the cast, the forced storylines, and the unoriginal plot. So I guess that means that it's time to wrap it all together. So out of the three, Mamma Mia took home the most at the box office worldwide. Across the Universe made $29.6 million, and with a budget of $70 million, that means they lost around $40 million. Mamma Mia's take was $610 million. They had a budget of $52 million, which means they made a profit of $558 million on this film. Rock of Ages made $59 million and had a budget of $75 million, meaning they only lost about $16 million. Across the Universe lost the most money of the three. And personally, I think this is because it wasn't based on an already popular musical, and probably because of the unabashed queer rep, which in 2007 was not really seen all that often, if ever. And there was nothing negative about the queer portrayal of Prudence's character. It wasn't even played off as a joke or a one-liner. I couldn't find any information on if TV Carpio is bi or queer or not, although she is married currently to a man, which really doesn't have anything to do with her sexuality, but at least her character wasn't played by someone who was out as straight at the time. Looking at you, Rock of Ages. I remember watching this movie in theaters, and a group of teenage girls who were sitting in front of us laughed every time Prudence was on screen being gay, which was very annoying, but it was also very of the time. While each of the movies have somewhat of a gay storyline, I feel like Across the Universes was the only one that didn't feel disingenuous. Mamma Mia also just had objectively a bigger name cast and a better story than certainly at least Rock of Ages. ABBA is also overall a decidedly less divisive group than the Beatles. After all, John had his "we're bigger than Jesus" moment. They also had their drug use and their political views. And the story of Mamma Mia is just more cohesive of a theme than that of general 80s music. Overall, I think Across the Universe definitely would have done better if it had come out more recently, especially with all the Beatles docs that have come out lately. So it's time to answer the question I asked in the beginning of the video. What was in the water during this time that made studios make so many of these jukebox musicals, even though they weren't really all that successful? In her article on her blog from August of 2023, retired drama teacher Drama Mama Speaks puts it this way: jukebox musicals use pre-existing popular songs and integrate them into their storylines. They bring together the familiarity of beloved songs with the excitement of a live performance. And I think that's just it, a mix of familiarity, whether from having seen the stage show and or nostalgia for the music itself, and the feeling of being at a concert for a much cheaper price, got people excited for jukebox musical movies. And studios saw an easy cash grab because of these feelings. I mean, the whole reason I saw these movies was because I was already familiar with the music and I wanted to see them integrated into a story. I actually saw Mamma Mia on stage in Las Vegas the year before the movie came out, so I knew I was going to like the film already. It was an easy choice to see it over other films at the time. But it all really comes down to that sweet money, 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 as ABBA said. The popularity of the music just made these types of movies a slam dunk for studios. Journalist Tim Adams says in his article for The Guardian, titled "Look Back, Enjoy: The Power of Nostalgia," that nostalgia is shown to be both a driver of empathy and social connectedness, and is a potent internal antidote for loneliness and alienation. The jukebox musical movie genre is simply nostalgia. nostalgia bait. The one commonality between these jukebox musicals is their music from the past that people have an emotional connection to. If we made one with music of today, it would just feel like an extra long episode of Glee, and nobody wants that. This powerful feeling of nostalgia is what draws us to these musicals in the first place. And if they are also well written and have actors that people actually like, they can turn into box office gold. So that's all that I have for y'all today. Please let me know down in the comments what you think of jukebox musicals, jukebox musical movies, which one of these that I mentioned is your favorite and why. And while you're down there, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I am trying to make it to 2,000 subscribers and we are so very close, so that's very exciting. And if you want to see more videos like this, please give this video a like and share it around with others as well. And while you're down there doing all those things, you can also check out the affiliate links that I have down in my description if you would like to help out this channel monetarily, since I really don't make any money off of these videos yet, but that is only if you feel called to do so. No pressure if not. And as always, don't forget to also drink some water, take your medicine, and eat something today if you haven't done those 3 things yet. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye!